Let's just listen into the whole conversation and the reporters asking questions of the two leaders during and after the signing of what is being called a comprehensive agreement.
Thank you very much. So we're signing a very important document, a pretty comprehensive document, and we've had a really great term together, a great relationship. I'll be giving a news conference at 2:30, which is in a little bit less than 2 hours, and we'll discuss this at great length. In the meantime, I believe that they'll be handing it out on behalf of Chairman Kim and myself. And we're both very honored to sign the document. Thank you.
우리가 매우 중요한 문서에 서명을 하게 될 것입니다. 이 문서는 굉장히 포괄적인 문서이고 오늘 굉장히 좋은 아주 훌륭한 회담을 가졌고 또 아주 좋은 관계를 구축하였습니다. 2시 반, 즉 다시 말해서 약 2시간 후에 나는 기자회견을 할 예정입니다. 거기서 좀 더 자세하게 말씀을 드리겠습니다만은 일단 그 와중에 그동안에는 발표문이 기자들에게 배포될 것으로 알고 있습니다. 감사합니다.
Would you like to say something to the press?
우리는 오늘 역사적인 이 만남에서 지난 과거를 덮고 새로운 출발을 알리는 그 역사적인 문건에 서명을 하게 됩니다.
Today, we had a historic meeting and decided to leave the past behind, and we are about to sign a historic document.
세상은 아마 중대한 변화를 보게 될 것입니다.
The world will see a major change.
오늘과 같은 이런 자리를 위해서 노력해 주신 트럼프 대통령께 사의를 표합니다.
I would like to express my gratitude to President Trump to make this meeting happen.
감사합니다.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay.
Mr. President, did he agree to denuclearize first?
We're starting that process very quickly. Very, very quickly. Absolutely.
Mr. President, 100% denuclearization? Did you talk about auto-warm beer, sir?
Mr. Kim, did you agree to give up your nuclear arms?
You'll be seeing everything in just a little while. The letter that we're signing is very comprehensive, and I think both sides are going to be very impressed with the result. A lot of goodwill went into this, a lot of work, a lot of preparation. I want to thank everybody on both sides, Secretary Pompeo and all of his counterparts. They were absolutely fantastic.
네, 조금 후에 우리가 서명한 발표문의 내용에 대해서 꼭 알게 될 것입니다. 아까도 얘기했습니다만은 매우 포괄적인 그러한 문서이고 양측이 그 결과에 대해서 굉장히 만족할 만한 결과입니다. 이 문서를 서명하고 또 이러한 그 만남을 갖기 위해서 많은 사람들이 선의를 가지고 노력했고 또 많은 준비 작업이 있었습니다. 그 양측의 그러한 작업을 해주신 분들에 대해서 감사드립니다. 거기에는 폼페오 장관뿐만 아니라 조선 측의 그러한 여러 참여자분들에게 감사드립니다.
Thank you very much. It's fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you a little bit later. And we're very proud of what took place today. I think our whole relationship with North Korea and the Korean Peninsula is it's going to be a very much different situation than it has in the past. We both want to do something. We both are going to do something. And we have developed a very special bond. So people are going to be very impressed. People are going to be very happy. and we're going to take care of a very big and very dangerous problem for the world. And I want to thank Chairman Kim. Spent a lot of time together today, very intensive time. And I would actually say that it worked out for both of us far better than anybody could have expected. I think far better. I watched the various news reports. I would say far better than anybody even predicted. And this is going to lead to more and more and more. And it's an honor to be with you. Very great honor. Thank you. Thank you to all of your representatives very much.
오늘 둘 다 뭔가 이루어내려고 싶어하고 또 둘의 특별한 관계가 오늘 시작됐습니다. 그리고 우리는 아주 여러 가지 중요한 여러 가지 문제의 해결에 시작을 했다라고 말씀드릴 수가 있습니다. 김 위원장님께 감사드리고 또 내가 보기에는 오늘 만남이 그 누가 기대했던 것보다 또 그 누가 예측했던 것보다도 좋은 만남이고 좋은 결과로 이루어질 것 같습니다. 또 앞으로 더 많은 진척이 있을 것 같고 이렇게 만나게 된 것을 영광으로 생각합니다. 김 위원장님 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Will you invite Chairman Kim to the White House?
Absolutely, I will.
Mr. Kim, would you like to come to Washington?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Go to Ramesh Ramchandran live in Singapore. Ramesh, you have been pointing out who all will be watching really closely apart from the domestic constituencies of these two leaders. We're getting in reactions already from the Chinese. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is being quoted as saying China welcomes and supports the history-making talks between the DPRK, as North Korea is known, and the US, and will continue to play a unique and important role to resolve the peninsula issue. We do know that the Blue House was watching very closely Moon Jae-in, and South Korea has also called these the talks of the century.
Absolutely. We've heard from South Korea and China already, Japan, Russia, all the other countries in the region and beyond can be expected to make their respective statements welcoming the developments here in Singapore, the talks between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. This is not just about North Korea and the US, it's about the entire region and the world at large. This is not a bilateral issue, it is a global issue, some would say, and insist on treating it like that. So this has implications for the region and beyond. So what is happening here in Singapore has implications for all the countries in the Indo-Pacific region, India included. Remember, India wants peace and tranquility in its immediate neighborhood, and it includes the extended neighborhood in the Indo-Pacific. And India is invested in shoring up its activities and profile in the wider region. So any instability in the Indo-Pacific will have a bearing on countries in the region, including India. So India is also watching these developments very keenly. But that said, India's concern is slightly different from the other countries, to the extent that India sees a clear proliferation linkage between North Korea and Pakistan, referring to the infamous AQ Khan network. So India's concerns are more to do with the proliferation linkages between these two countries, and that, to my mind, is being reflected in every statement that has been issued by India in the recent past.
Ambassador, we've seen the first reactions coming from both from Beijing and from Seoul.
Yes, and I think it would be along expected lines, because clearly whatever happens later, for the moment it is a historic summit. The US President and North Korean leader have met for the first time, and they have worked out something which is seen as a successful outcome, and a process moving forward. And from China's perspective, a reduction in the tension between US and North Korea is helpful, because then they can try and work for resuming normal trade and economic relations with North Korea, because instability in North Korea, or large-scale movement of people out of North Korea because of poverty and other aspects into China, is something that they would not want. And if there is reduction in tension on the Korean peninsula, then China can push for removal of the THAAD missiles from South Korea, for lowering of US presence in South Korea or in that entire region, which again would be useful from China's point of view. And South Korea itself is very heavily invested in the process, because reunification is something that is certainly not immediately on the cards, because there are costs to it. And there are huge difference in the level of economic development between South Korea and North Korea. But a reduction in tension, some kind of normal levels of interaction between people on the two sides, trade and economic flows, So those would be very important and would calm the atmosphere within South Korea, because a lot of people want a more normalized relationship and reunification of families, because many people have not been able to meet their family members.
That was reflected in a survey, I think, in South Korea, where Kim Jong-un's stature rose from low double digits to over 60% over the last few days.
Absolutely, when he had these interactions. But let me also inject a note of caution that if North Korea starts to normalize and sort of allow more regular flows between South Korea and North Korea, can it sustain the kind of a closed and tight regime it has? And that will be a question that will be asked.
Maybe China is the model there again for that, how China's managed that.
Whether they can manage, whether they have the institutional capacity, because people talk of more than 200,000 people in North Korea being in prisons. There's huge economic deprivation. So even before they go down the Chinese model, do they need to have a level of economic development? So how do they manage that process? Will also not be easy. So I think there are a lot of challenges going ahead.
A lot of challenges, Ramesh, but still, as you're going on pointing out, we can't take away from this moment, this day itself, and how it has changed. The US President Donald Trump called Kim Jong-un a rocket man, not so recently in the past, and now he calls him a very talented man. There's also been references to him being short and fat, and today at the luncheon we heard him talk to the reporters and say, I hope you're taking photographs that make us look thin and fantastic.
Amitabh, let's acknowledge a few things here. Nobody half expected, even half expected this to happen in less than 1 year of Moon Jae-in coming to power in South Korea. Nobody expected Moon Jae-in to have a third inter-Korean summit with Kim Jong-un barely a few months after he came to power in South Korea. Nobody expected this to happen in Singapore between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. So this is big. This is huge. This is unprecedented. This is a game-changing development for the Korean Peninsula and the region at large. Remember this, as I keep insisting here, Amitabh, this has implications for the region and beyond. So every country of consequence is watching this very, very carefully and drawing their own conclusions. Remember, many countries in the region, including China, will be wary of seeing the US try to strike, to co-opt North Korea away from the Chinese stranglehold, so to speak, or the Chinese sphere of influence. Where South Korea will be worried about what happening, how it will impact the South Korea-US ties. So the US South Korea ties and North Korea-China ties will come for a particular amount of strain going forward. How they negotiate the so-called political minefield going forward will remain a challenge. It will be interesting to watch how the South Koreans and the North Koreans play their cards in the next few days going forward.
But it's interesting bringing up Moon Jae-in, and we saw pictures earlier in the day before the handshake, and he was apparently glued to the television and he saw the handshake there. The Republicans, President Trump himself may project this moment and further as President Trump deserving the Nobel Prize, but Moon Jae-in, the way he has coaxed the whole process, he was elected on this very plank. Now, there have to be kudos given to him.
Absolutely. He's played a very big role because, as you mentioned, he was elected on this process. He pushed the process with North Korea. He welcomed the North Korean leader for meetings, and they met twice recently. And when President Trump sent that letter cancelling the meeting with North Korea, the reaction in South Korea was one of great concern, because I think he saw the whole effort he had been making collapsing, and he would come in for a lot of criticism, and then he took many steps to once again get that process going. So I think the South Korean leadership and support for this process has been critical in persuading President Trump several times around to continue down this path. And so that has been a very vital element, because if they hadn't pushed, perhaps President Trump may have vacillated a little.
Well, it's just interesting to point out that North Korean television has just come on air about 18 minutes back, leading the broadcast, a short report, not about events as we would expect. Usually there's at least a 24-hour lag, but this time it's not that much of a lag. But they're showing Kim Jong-un's night outing in Singapore yesterday, so possibly we'll be seeing what the North Koreans are visualizing currently. Ramesh, just coming back to you, talking about North Korea itself, like we've seen usually there's at least a 24-hour lag of news events reporting. We're not talking about the content of what is reported. That's, of course, controlled by the state tremendously. North Korea itself, how do we expect the Koreans to react? Of course, there are very diverse elements in North Korea itself.
Amitabh, I'll share an anecdote. The 27th of April, early morning, Kim Jong-un crossed the military demarcation line to shake hands with Moon Jae-in. Now, that news was telecast by the Korean state television 1 day later. So you can imagine the dynamic at play here. And by the way, Amitabh, even the Singapore event, the Korean state broadcaster has only used still photographs to embellish their reportage. They did not use visual images to show North Koreans what their leader was up to in Singapore. So you can imagine the nature, how the North Korean media and the state works, and this, by their standards, is huge because they would want to extract maximum mileage from it. How they do it will be interesting to watch out in the next few hours, Amitabh.
But again, just going back to China itself, how you were pointing out how China is closely watching this. There were a lot of analysts who were looking at this in terms of the North Koreans getting closer to the US and China being wary of that, and then subsequently 2 summits in China itself. But China has been a bulwark for North Korea in the past, even though it has played a role in pressurizing Kim Jong-un to come to the negotiating table.
So I don't think China would be worried to the point of North Korea getting closer to the US vis-a-vis China. I think they're far from that.
Kim Jong-un mentioned that this, many people who are looking at this would be not believing in it, thinking it's a fantasy, science fiction. But looking in the future, some analysts were projecting that possibly North Korea would ask for the security assurances from the US itself. Now that's far-fetched at the moment.
I think they would certainly want security assurance from the US in terms of regime security, that the US would not take...
providing it like they're doing it for South Korea. That's too far-fetched.
That's too far-fetched, because I think North Korea's dependence on China economically and for other linkages is far deeper. Yeah. And given the current mood in the US, where the US wants to draw down on its commitments globally, the US commitment to NATO is coming under challenge. US has said that its commitments in South Korea, Japan are a drain on its resources. So to think that US would make a commitment for North Korean security in the context of other countries in the region, I think that's really not going to happen. So from that point of view, China would certainly welcome this process. China's only concern would be that it doesn't evolve in a way that doesn't take care of China's interests. And they would certainly not want a reunification on the Korean Peninsula adversarial to China's security interests. Beyond that, they would certainly sort of support and welcome a reduction in tension in the Korean Peninsula, because that can be an argument for asking for withdrawal of US presence in that region, which is what China has been trying in the entire Indo-Pacific region.
Sure. Ramesh, just a quick closing comments from you on the domestic constituencies that are playing out here. President Trump will undoubtedly use this or portray it as some kind of a victory, even though it is a huge event as such, but specifics will take a long while to come by. November elections in the US as well. The domestic constituency that is being played here, even if President Trump can project that there could be at some point of time withdrawal or reduction of US troops as he is wanting from different parts of the world.
I've said it before, I say it again, Amitabh. This Donald Trump wants to emerge from the Singapore summit as a deal maker. This is his initiative. He has no alibi, no excuse, no defense if things did not work out the way it did here in Singapore just moments ago. So it was his call, his initiative, his idea, his enterprise, and he had to make efforts to ensure that this was an unmitigated success, not a PR disaster or a failure. So I think he would have achieved those ends here after meeting Kim Jong-un, but the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. We've known both sides renege from their commitments, so North Korea and the US will both pore over the joint statement going forward and make their own deductions, inferences, and strategies going forward. But the fact of the matter is, this is unprecedented summit. It's a historic summit, a momentous occasion in world history, one between two states who have not had any ties, no diplomatic ties for 7 decades and counting. So to that extent, this is something which has never happened before in America's history.
Right, we'll wait for the press conference that we're expecting from the American side, but news agency AFP, Ambassador, just breaking some news saying that the Trump-Kim document commits the U.S. to security guarantees and eyes the establishment of a new U.S.-DRPK relation. Now, the second part is fine, but again, security guarantees, something has been talked about.
No, but again, I think here, offhand, we would say security guarantee for the regime, not security guarantee vis-a-vis others in the region. So, but we'll have to look at this language that comes.
Again, a quick comment from you, if that's what is part of it, Ramesh, security guarantees. Mike Pompeo talked about that in his press conference pre the summit.
Well, Amitabh, if Kim Jong-un is as smart as some people think he is, he will not take America or any other country at face value. He will acknowledge America's statements, but he will not go by what America is saying or telling him. So security guarantees has only so much shelf life. He will want categorical assurances actually being seen in action on the ground and not just words or rhetoric emanating from the State Department or White House. So to that extent, he would take everything that America said in the last 24 hours with a pinch of salt. Security guarantees would require a lot of negotiation going forward, if common understanding on the way forward, where North Korea sees itself 5-10 years from now and where America sees itself invested in the Indo-Pacific region. So there are many issues that still bedevil the relationship, but this is an important first step.
Ramesh Ramrandan, live from Singapore, and Ambassador Singh, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this extremely momentous day. We're still waiting for categorics to come out from the Trump-Kim documents that have been signed.